Hello, my name's Lisa Harrison, and today I'm talking to Andrew Norton Webber, the creator of AquariusTheWaterBearer.com website. And today we're going to be talking about distilled waters and the physical and also spiritual benefits of drinking distilled waters. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, Lisa, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. I've personally had the benefit of speaking with you now twice over the last month or so, and I've learned a lot from those conversations directly. I've also learned a lot from the information that you've made available on that website and just from doing some Google searches myself. And I have to be honest, I've been swinging between fury that this information is not commonly known
Yeah.
and the unnecessary and premature deaths as a result, the lack of quality of life as a result, and then complete joy that this information is coming out again. And it's more confirmation for me about the whole 2012 phenomenon that all of this ancient knowledge is coming back to us. So I've been like a pendulum over the last month. And I think it's important that we actually do start up with that you're not a medical practitioner and that this is not medical advice. What you're sharing is your personal experience and the personal experiences of others who have shared their testimonials with you, and the results of basically your own research and your own journey over the
Yeah, my
last how many years?
6, 8, 10, I kind of lose track. I mean, I'd say roughly 10 years back, I started looking.
Hmm.
Uh, Urine may have come along 6 years ago or 8 years ago, and then distilled water was not too long ago at all, about maybe 2 years now.
So, just to give a groundwork to work from, a framework, distilled liquids, there is essentially three that I'm aware of. We've got your fruit juice, distilled water, and urine. And before anyone gets put off thinking we're going to talk about urine for the next hour or so, that's not purely the case. There's a lot of information in this to this subject, and predominantly distilled water really is the core of it. Um, so your journey didn't start with urine; it started actually with water.
It started with health, just in general, and then came urine, and then came distilled water. There's a fourth one, all precipitation, all rain, mist, snow, dew, and fog are distilled water. We have three natural sources and one artificial source, the machines. Um, but yeah, I learned about urine. I was talking to a yogi about maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and just become aware of all the poisons and become aware of fluoride. And we had dug a well, and I was just looking for a way to keep my family healthy. And I had a yogi over the house who supposedly was an expert at raw foods, and I just learned about that too. And I spent about 2 hours treating him like a human Google machine. And then towards the end of it, I was kind of out of questions. I was asking about herbs and vegetables and fruits and gems and crystals and everything I could think of. And he just kind of all of a sudden, he said, you could drink your urine and cure just about anything. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, go look up urine therapy. And it's still to this day, if it hadn't been for that one guy saying that one time, I don't think I'd be talking to you about this right now, because it's so well hidden. And you can look up the most fabulous health books you want, and the most you'll see reference to urine is as a waste product, or when you're doing detox, they tell you it's going to be all coming out in your urine, and because they assume that it's an excretory channel, but it's not.
If it's not an excretory channel, what is it?
It's an extras channel. Every other channel is excretory. There's two main ingredients, well, three. There's the water plus the two things, and those are building blocks and pieces of information or education. And the building blocks, it's all, I say extra or excess. For the first thing, it's all excess water. Like when you drink a lot of beer, you have to pee a lot, and it's usually clear. That's Right there, you're seeing your body do a pressure release on the overall pressure system. But it's also excess minerals, vitamins, hormones, all kinds of compounds, human growth hormone. And the other thing is it's information. And that's the part that people would coming closest to wanting to call it a waste product. But the urine, so the kidneys so finely filter and distill the water that all that comes through of what you would call bad guys are the essence, or if you're familiar with homeopathy, they keep diluting things to the nth degree, say even with chamomile. If the instructions in the homeopathy kit say to take chamomile, when you look at those little tiny chamomile pills under the microscope, it's so diluted. The first couple of stages of Doolittle cell aren't, you can still find molecules of chamomile, but it actually, the really powerful homeopathic stuff, you can't find any molecules of chamomile in there. And it's the fact that it used to be touching that water. And that's kind of like Emoto's water has a memory thing. And so the vibration or the memory of chamomile is in that pill and whatever it does for whatever sickness you have. Well, that's the same way. That's the closest thing you would call, but it's not at all. It's not even any particulates of the bad things in there. But if you've got the flu, or if you got cancer or tuberculosis, or if you just got bit by a snake or a spider or a scorpion, within seconds, there will be what are called antigens, and those would be the reference to the homeopathic sized dots, antigens of whatever's wrong with you in the urine. And that's the educational part, because when you drink it, the two lymph nodes under your tongue study it, and they are the guys that produce antibodies. So as soon as that comes in there, they study the antibodies and go, oh, this is what's messing with us. Now we know to produce the flu antibodies or cancer antibodies. They're kind of given this beauty, but it's good we're doing it right in the beginning anyways, the whole snake, spider, and scorpion bite thing. Just so everybody knows, this whole thing we've been terrified our entire lives is a total joke. This whole speech is going to prove to all of us that we are all powerful beings. And anytime you hear anybody tell you anything, starting off with the premise that the human is a loser and you need these extra things to be able to function in the universe, you should stop listening to them, because we are the all powerful creatures. And it comes right down to even snake bites.
You're probably aware that Australia is well known for its somewhat venomous creatures.
Yeah, it's too.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about any poisonous bite. It doesn't matter how powerful the poison is. Just wait 15 seconds after you get bit, and all you have to do is pee out a little bit in your hand and put it under your tongue and sit there and hold it. And these two lymph nodes are going to study it, and you won't die. It's just like having a snake vaccine kit, except with that kit you need one antidote for every single snake that exists. Well, that's all your body does when it distills your blood constantly. It's constantly putting out the information in your urine of what's wrong with you, and just immediately, if you get bit by a snake, you don't have to run terrified to the hospital or just think that it's all over and start saying goodbye to your wife or your husband. Just pee out.
You've had personal experience with this, so
Yeah.
you can speak from that place. So please share.
Sure, thank you. My dad and I are both deathly allergic to wasp stings, and we look similar. We have physical build, and we both have an allergy to walnuts, and that's a more minor one, but that also has been cured by this. My dad and I used to know whenever there were walnuts in cookies, because we would get eruptions of canker sores in our mouth shortly, 20 minutes after eating banana bread or any cookie that had walnuts in it. They didn't tell us. We would know. We both did it. It was painful. But this will also, for any of these allergies, peanut allergies, milk. I mean, there's kids that can't even go into class lunchrooms because it's completely curable. And the vast majority of the allergies are caused by fluoride, ripping your DNA apart, and it's just not functioning properly because it's so destroyed by the fluoride poisoning. But the repeated use, when you're having an allergic reaction to something, the antigens are in your blood. And so when you drink it, it educates the lymph nodes. Now, you can, by the repeated drinking of my urine, over time, I learned to not react to the walnuts at all. And now I can eat them like mad, and I get no canker sores at all. Um, and again, we'll try not to talk about too much about urine right in the beginning, but it's good we get on this life-saving tip so everybody can erase this ridiculous fear that we all have. Um, I'm also deathly allergic to wasp stings, and he and I start to die. We go into anaphylactic shock. Our chest starts to swell up. Our throat swells up. We get all itchy and red-skinned. And before I knew about it, um, I came close to dying one time. I went to the hospital, and it was a packed room, and they treat anaphylactic shock very seriously because it can take you over. It can be 5 to 10 minutes, or it can be a half an hour, but it's coming quickly. But sometimes it can just grab people. It can just come on so quickly. So even though it looked like there was a 5 hour wait in that waiting room, if you had a broken finger or something, I wasn't sitting down but 5 seconds. But I said, Andrew Weber, and they immediately surrounded me with 5 doctors and nurses and put liquid IV into me, a liquid Benadryl IV on the other hand, put oxygen to my face. They're taking my blood pressure, my pulse, and they physically calmed me down. Um, the next time I got stung by a wasp, I knew about this, and I said, "Whoa!" I said, "There's my chance." And 3 days earlier, my friend and I have been joking. Oh yeah, well, we should get a rattlesnake, see if it's true. Well, I got my opportunity 3 days later. No, it's not a snake, but I have a prescription for an EpiPen, and I go into anaphylactic shock if I get bit by a wasp. So it is deathly to me. And I saw the bite of my arm, and I saw the wasp, and I said, "Oh man!" I said, "Well, here's my chance." And I waited about 12 to 15 seconds. I mean, it's probably in your urine within 3 to 5 seconds, but just wait 15 just to be sure. Um, Peed a little bit in my hand, and I put it on my tongue, and I sat there at the kitchen table with my car keys in one hand and the EpiPen in the other. And 10 minutes went by, and 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, total silence. Whereas the last time my skin had started to itch, then I started getting hives, I started getting red skin. I said, "You better take me to the hospital." And my chest was swelling up by the time I got there. This time, not a single thing happened, not a single reaction. And the only thing I felt was a couple of days later, there's a little bit of itch at the site of the sting, like it was healing.
Has it only
So
happened that once, or have you had another opportunity?
it's happened 2 more times since then. So I've used it 3 times, and I've been less and less scared each time. And once I got over the first time, I was like, yes.
And how
Uh,
long did you hold it under your tongue for?
I sat there for about 20 minutes, and then I was just like, oh, I don't know. I peed out again a little bit. I swallowed the first part and said I'd do a second part for some reason. I don't think I really had to. But I sat there for 40 minutes in total, I think, um, just waiting to see what would happen. But,
That's amazing.
and so the other way people have peanut or milk allergies or any of the crazy allergies, you can make, definitely when you're having that reaction, put some drops under your tongue. But also, if a homeopathic solution of your urine, you can make, it's already a homeopathic solution, but you can make one so that you can capture the information that's in your urine during the height of that reaction. And so all you do to do that is take 1 drop of urine and 2 tablespoons of water, or just a little bit of water. It doesn't, it's not an exact science because just has to be, the more it's diluted, the more power. It's weird. The more diluted things are in homeopathy, the stronger the reaction.
Mm.
Whereas a large dose of snake or bee poison will kill somebody, in the homeopathy kits, the exact thing they tell you to take is apis, APIS, which is bee poison. So they tell you to take bee poison in order to counter the bee poison. The tiny, tiny amount of it just sets off this complete reaction in the other direction against it. So you can make a homeopathic solution. Take 1 drop of your urine and 2 tablespoons of water and shake it really strongly, maybe 50 times. And now you've created a homeopathic solution. And what you can do with that, for however long it lasts, say 3 times a day, put 10 drops under your tongue. And what that'll keep doing is it'll keep stimulating your lymph nodes, these guys, to study it. And though now it's a super, super fractional amount of it, but it keeps giving it the information. And eventually, like you get the chickenpox vaccine, or you get the smallpox vaccine or polio vaccine. Once you get those once the body knows that creature, it's forever immune to it because it knows it. It doesn't have to waste any time studying it and learning how to make the new antibodies. It's always got the formula. So for peanut allergies, and I've definitely erased my walnut allergy. I absolutely have no more symptoms whenever I eat. And I eat them like crazy now because I love them. And I always used to, but they would kill me. I mean, they would hurt me. And so now it's been 3 times with wasp. I've never gone through the trouble of making the homeopathic solution. I should, but I kind of know about the trick anyway, so I haven't. But anybody can reverse their allergies.
In order of power and strength and results from the three, we'll stick with the three distilled liquids that we mentioned earlier, fruit juice, distilled water, and urine. It kind of is in that order in terms of its health and spiritual benefits. However, having said that, and we've talked a bit about urine already, just focusing on distilled water, because that's where most people will be prepared to go, the benefits are still there. It may take a little bit longer, but all of the health benefits that are talked about from urine therapy are available through just drinking distilled water. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I guess we should come to the overall, what we're going to be talking about here is the distilled waters and what is the common ingredient across, I'm sorry to say four, but the fruit and vegetable juices, as long as they're raw, everything pasteurized is total poison. So all raw plant juices are distilled, all precipitation, all urine, and all machine made. The common ingredient across all four of those is distilled water. And that's why I've been asked to speak at the New World Fair that's coming up in July and also me speaking at the World Urine Conference, because it's already truth. I'm just have to be the one that's currently pointing out that it's the common thread across the four liquids. And a real big problem in the urine therapy world is it's incredibly hard to get it because of the yuck factor. But because I studied urine therapy so well, and then I happened to stumble across distilled water books, even though I'd already been fooled by there's an on-purpose suppression out there of the knowledge because it completely cleans out the body and removes the cause of all health problems. It's the pure water. And I had at first thought, to tell people you have to get a distiller. And even though it's the most direct machine that does it, it's really, it's whatever path you take to acquire pure water. And I literally mean as in 0 parts per million. And I just got a total dissolved solids meter, which gives you a readout in parts per million, for $13 on Amazon, and you can test your water. And it doesn't matter if you're sending it through reverse osmosis machines or Kangen machines, or you want it as 0 parts per million. And the Kangen people are adding dots to it, so I actually don't know how their water comes out. They deionize it, which makes it distilled, and then they add alkalizing drops. That's something I actually still need to look into because they report a lot of incredible health benefits, and it may be so. But they're adding drops to it, and I don't know yet. I haven't actually called them myself and asked, are these organic minerals or inorganic minerals, which is kind of the crux of the whole issue. And it's only inorganic minerals that are conductive to harmful electricity. And so when you use a total dissolved solids meter, that's what it's reading, is the number of parts per million that conduct electricity. And it should be 0. And so what the beauty of this knowledge that we're talking about is the exact benefits that are available through urine therapy, which most people don't even realize are true. And so that's a hurdle in itself, are available through distilled water. And the whatever you dreamed of that Ponce de Leon and his crew might have found, and what would happen to them if they started drinking from the fountain of youth, that's exactly what will happen to you if you start drinking a gallon a day of any distilled liquid. And of course, the easy thing for anybody to start with is water. The juices are incredibly fun as well and easy. But it's all I'm really offering are the original cleaning instructions for the human body. This is what is missing in a blatant ridiculousness. As we see our brethren walk about, they're all gray and ashen, and they look like they're full of junk, and they literally are. But except for the doctors that somehow come across it on their own, because it isn't offered as knowledge in medical school, anything about cleaning the body. It's all allopathic, specifically focusing on the symptoms. And this is silly because it doesn't ever remove the cause of the symptoms. And this is the real distilled water. That's all it does, is focus on removing the cause. It's magnetically attracted to all garbage.
So whenever I've looked at information in regards to urine from the more medical perspective, they will tell you that it's only 95% water. So we ignore that bit. And it's 5% byproduct, waste byproduct. And it's that 5% that they try to look at and study and figure out what's in that 5% that may have physical benefits. But you made the connection that it's not the 5%, essentially, it's that 95% that is the distilled water that is where the benefits are coming from. And the other thing that I found interesting is words. The names that we give things, especially names that you can trace back to the Greek and the Latin, they're very telling. And when you look at the kidneys, and I learnt this from you directly, that it's covered in what's called distillates. Or is that the right pronunciation?
They're called nephrons, and if you look at an individual nephron, there's 1 million nephrons inside each kidney. There's a golden chamber in the center, but the whole outer part of it is the nephron, and there's 1 million of them each one. And it looks like a still. When you've ever seen somebody making alcohol, there's all these crazy loops, and even a part of it is called the distal tubule. And so you can say you have 1 million distillation tubes inside each kidney.
That in itself is very, very telling, is it not?
Yeah, yeah.
So the knowledge was there many, many years ago.
Knowledge is, we've got 5,000 to 6,000 year old documents. There's the Egyptian Water of Life papyrus, and then there's the ancient Indian Sanskrit document called the Shivambu Kalpa. It's 106 verses specifically devoted to telling you how to use urine. And the Egyptian Water of Life papyrus is about 15 lines. And it just starts out with, the water of life is given to you, drink it and wash your body with it. One of the other beautiful lines in that is said, the water of life will reveal the hidden senses. It just completely describes what urine therapy does to people. And it turns out that they're not kidding when they call it the water of life. And in rivers of living water, wherever that is in the Bible, they're talking about urine. And then for me personally, doing this distilled water thing, they're really talking about water. It's water that is the life, that is the carrier of life, or life.
So let's go over some of the health benefits that you've personally experienced, and you've had testimonials from others. There's diabetes, including the correction of the deformities that are caused through. Sorry, that's arthritis I'm talking about.
Well, no, their fingers deform too. Diabetics, and their feet get all swollen up. They start having their feet amputated because they're just getting clogged up there's no blood flow.
So diabetes, arthritis, you've got cancer, AIDS,
yeah,
tuberculosis,
yeah,
allergies.
Yeah.
What else?
hepatitis C, multiple sclerosis, um, every dis-ease. Uh, it's just all matter. It's all foreign matter in the body causing the problems. And distilled water does nothing but focus on removing foreign matter. And so there's two, we'll make sure we repeat this. There's two very important pieces to this knowledge is that one, that pure water is a cleaner. And it's that consistent large volume is the method. I get 0 phone calls or testimonials from people that do a quart to a half a gallon a day. All of the testimonials I get whenever I ask them, and they're testimonials of things that you would call miraculous, the answer always comes back, where I say, well, how much are you doing? It's always a gallon or 4 liters, somewhere between a gallon and a half, and 4 to 6 liters. And there's people, or a lot of times have a real, they're like, whoa, you can't do that much. You're going to hurt your kidneys. And I've got a few things to back that up. We have 3 doctors, Dr. Norman Walker, Dr. Hanish, and Dr. Bannock. All 3 of them are experts and have written books about it. Dr. Hanish's book is called The Distilled Water Cure. It's only 16 pages, and currently healthresearchbooks.com prints that. They're the only ones doing it. But this knowledge is so simple. That's why the books are short. Dr. Bannock's book is called The Choice is Clear. That's 48 pages. And sometimes you can find it, well, a lot of times it's under $1 on Amazon. But it's all the knowledge you need. You could read that and you wouldn't need to listen to you and I. And then Dr. Norman Walker, he is the inventor of the best juicer in the world, the Norwalk juicer, because he understood that it was the distilled water aspect, and he wanted to build the best juicer in the world. All 3 of them, when you look at their personal instructions, they're recommending in the gallon to a gallon and a half range. So you got them backing you up. Nice. Cheers.
Yes, it's distilled, by the way.
This is not my tea. The real telling thing about the daily volume is that in the urine therapy world, when you're going full on trying to cure something, you stop eating altogether and you drink all of your urine. And whether you're eating or not and fasting or not, the process of drinking all the urine is what starts an incredible distillation. You create distilled water to the nth degree, whereas this has been through a machine and it's been distilled once. The human body distills it, is more sterile than distilled water just one time through. So you keep looping it over and over again. And at first, when you try distilled water, you're like, whoa, it's really smooth. I can't believe it. But then also, believe it or not, you can create water out of your own self once you get clean enough and you start cycling it. That's even smoother than distilled water. And right now, most of us are so tongue dead. We're so there's so many toxins going over tongue that we're really numb to fresh flavors. We're so into cooked food that you can't even get a high off of eating raw fruits and vegetables, which when you do get cleaned out, you actually start to feel these subtle lifts. And you also start to become more sensitive to water the more you start playing with it and drinking with it. I mean, anybody right now, just if you never had it before, go out and buy a gallon and put 2 identical glasses and compare tap water to this water, tap water, and you start, oh my gosh. And after a while, it's not really, there's flavor in the bad waters, but what you start to notice as you get into more pure water is that it's the texture, that there is no flavor because there's not supposed to be any flavor in hydrogen and oxygen. And it starts getting fluffier and fluffier the more it gets distilled. It seems to get smoother.
So, I mean, the biggest yuck factor for urine is the smell and the colour and the taste. It's not appealing. That is a direct result of our diet and what we're drinking, essentially. So if you up the ante, if you switch to distilled water and up the volume, and you're doing the gallon and a half a day, the urine automatically changes and it will become clearer, cleaner, lose its own smell, color, taste,
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
and ends up looking and tasting like distilled water anyway.
Hey, yes. It goes beyond. It actually takes on a slightly sweet coconut flavor. You know how babies smell sweet when they first come out? That the human body is supposed to smell like that, and we can all return to that flavor. The reason we all have deodorants is because we are constantly leaching toxins from a lifetime of eating cooked food. And all fruitarians, people that get really healthy, there's just no way around it. You start to smell sweet when you have a completely reset human body. Uh, and part of what we're also talking about here is when you reset the body, you have a chance to experience something you've never been in before, which is an adult with a fully online glandular system. The only time you were like that or close to it was when you were a baby, but you didn't have your adult willpower and wisdom yet. Now we're all adults, and we've especially had our butts kicked by this psychotic rat maze we've grown up in. And we're hungry for our power because we've been told nothing but that we're weak little idiots, one small step above cavemen. So you clean the body out, and we're all fired up and ready to go with a pineal gland, a pituitary. I mean, even the heart, how it doesn't work well either with linings of muck and deposit
Mm.
throughout it.
So even though we have we have kind of focused on urine, I want everybody to remember that everything we're saying here applies to distilled water that you can buy at the supermarket. Incidentally, after my first conversation with you, I went down to the supermarket to get some distilled water. Went to the water section. There was spring water and mineral water. There was all kinds of water in the water department. No distilled water. I had to go and I found it in the cleaning section next to the laundry powder, and that's where they stock it all because they recommend it for your iron and your electrical equipment, and so it's in there with the cleaning products, which is also apt. I mean, it's your body's cleaning products, so fair enough. Um, but yeah, I've had a few people that I've talked to about this. They've gone, I can't find it. It's like look in the cleaning products.
Maybe we should use that as a segue to make us talk more about distilled water. Let's talk about why it's the cleaner and how apt that it is that it's in the cleaning section. And as well in South America, at least where I was in Ecuador, nowhere in the supermarket you had to go to the automotive section, and it was in the battery department because that's another proof about it. But yeah, you can do that. You can stand in the water wherever the water is, and you can say, "Oh, are you going to buy that because you drink it?" And 9 times out of 10, it's like no. But well, why are you buying it? Well, I'm buying it to keeps my machines clean. Well, you're a machine. And the reason it does this is it won't let inorganic matter settle in these machines because it's magnetically attracted to it. This is the simple mechanics of distilled water is that it's nothing but negatively charged molecules. And every single item of garbage, dirt, and debris, parasites, pathogens that are not supposed to be in your body have a positive electrical charge to them. And we all know in the electrical world that opposites attract. And
Well, there are,
it mag-
I'm a very visual person. I need to be able to visualize. And when I'm drinking the water, I literally imagine that all the molecules are these negatively charged magnets that are
magnets.
crazily repelling against one another. And then as they go through my body, they're just collecting, like a magnet does, all of the positively charged crap that doesn't belong there. And it's just taking it out of my system. And the other visual I have is a river, because you were talking about volume. You really need to get to a certain point of volume. So when a river is flowing at its maximum volume, nothing gets a chance to settle on the bottom. It just continues to flow through. It's when it dries up, everything settles. So I've got this other visual of, and I still haven't reached the gallon or the 4 liters a day yet. I'm only somewhere between 1 and 3, depending on the day. But I'm still noticing the detox symptoms. I'm noticing changes. Not in the miraculous field, but subtle. And that's the other visual I have, is that as long as the volume is there, things are not settling in my joints, in my muscles, in my tissues. They don't get a chance to settle. They're constantly flowing. And that's really the fundamentals on how this works, isn't it? It's
That's
volume
perfect.
and the negatively charged molecules.
You spoke perfectly. And even the river allegory is the river of life. That's what they mean by rivers of living water. Yeah. And if you have that volume going through, the stuff can't settle. It stays in solution. Now, what most people don't know about is that there's two types of minerals. And we've been saying it as positive, negative, but in all of our food products, they don't do that. You know, when you buy spring water, it lists proudly that it's got calcium, magnesium, potassium on it. But they are purposely leaving out, because it would be a negative to their product, listing the ionic state, the ionic charge, whether it's organic or inorganic, whether it's a positively charged piece or negative. It's of the utmost importance to the human creature or any living creature, because inorganic matter is death to us, completely unusable.
That same definition, or lack of definition, between organic and inorganic is used in the argument against distilled liquids. They say that it leaches minerals from the body, but they don't make the definition between organic or inorganic minerals,
On
and
purpose.
on purpose. So when you do a Google search, which I've done, for distilled water, and if you do one for distilled water dangers, what I found is there's one article in particular by a Zoltan P. Rona,
Yep.
MD,
Uh-huh.
that turns up. There's only one article, but it just turns up again and again and again. And sometimes it looks like it's been edited or tweaked in some way, or just
Right.
extracts from it, and then no one's put their name to it. But if you've read the original article, you know where it's come from. So there's not a lot out there. There's just one article that gets rehashed. That's what I found. What can you say to people who watch this interview or hear you talk or visit your website and then want to go and do their own research and do come across this article? What counters do you have to that?
It's a complete lie. It's fake science. It is designed to scare you away from it. And if you keep looking beyond the inflammatory, it's called early death, comes from drinking distilled water. And it's meant to slap you in the face. And just in general, even if you, not even distilled water dangers, you just Google distilled water and that pops up, right? Is on the first page of hits. And I just recently sent a letter it's mainly shows up on Dr. Mercola's page. And a lot of people really trust him. And I'm glad you brought the article, because it is my number one nemesis in trying to spread this knowledge, because that's where people go, is on the internet, and that bam, early death. And Mercola is great on a lot of things, including fluoride. But I wish I wrote a letter to him. I would ask everybody else to start writing him letters and asking him, why is this letter on his page? We'll give him the benefit of the doubt that that he's been fooled, because almost every single doctor you ask, even your best friends' doctors, are the most nicest people you know. They all think that it kills you because of this misinformation campaign. And there's another one by the WHO, the World Health Organization.
Oh, there's someone I trust.
Yeah. So they are collected pinnacle of the health science knowledge, and they tell you the same exact things that the early death title article, the WHO's paper is called Demineralized Water. They put a negative tint to the name as well. They want to emphasize this whole lie that it leaches minerals from the body.
But it's not a lie in itself. It does leach minerals from the body,
right?
but it leaches the inorganic minerals.
Right. It's wordplay. It's an on-purpose half-truth obfuscation. There's four things they do. The main one is they tell you it'll leach minerals from the body. And what they're, again, leaving out on purpose is that it leaches the inorganic minerals. It is scientifically impossible for it to latch onto any living organic minerals because they have a negative charge. And distilled water is a negative charge. Sames repel. It's the opposites that attract. And it's all dead pieces inside you that it's attracted to. And so, yes, it does leach minerals, but to speak accurately, you must say it leaches inorganic minerals. And they state it that way just to lead you on so that you'll assume that it leaches both types of minerals, or even that most people aren't even cognizant that there's two mineral body groups. And just like all the spring waters list calcium, magnesium, potassium. If they were labeled truly, they would each say inorganic in front of them. And
But there is also enough evidence to suggest that both the medical profession and the big pharma industry as a whole know very well of the benefits and the power of both distilled water and urine, because they only use distilled water in their own processes. And I think it was you that told me that the dialysis is a process of running blood alongside distilled water and have the distilled water pull out the impurities in the blood.
two liquids beside each other want to equalize their weight. And there's a mesh kind of screen between the two flows of water. And so the distilled water, of course, is empty, and the blood is just from that person is full of junk. And so as they're running together, the stuff leaches over one and they equalize. And they keep doing that over time, and they keep running out the distilled water that's picked up the garbage, and they keep running through more and more. And eventually it gets to an equalized state with that person's blood. But that's why it takes like 6 or 8 hours, because they're just slowly rinsing it bit by bit. But what they use is distilled water. Distilled water.
Do you think that they know that drinking distilled water would do the same thing? Or do you think they just haven't gone there, or they're ignorant of that? Or have you had?
Well, for them in that moment, their kidneys aren't doing the distilling. And so it's not so much that they need to drink distilled water to get the dialysis done. It's that they need to drink the distilled water to unfreeze the kidneys. So the kidneys can then start resuming the distillation process, which is what it does.
So it's the kidneys being blocked with inorganic minerals, possibly, and other sludge, so that they're not doing the distilling process themselves.
Yeah. Every machine you use, if you don't clean it from time to time, it clogs up. Mm. It's just there's just no way around it, and it's silly that they're not cleaning people out. They're just offering them more poisons, as if that's going to make a difference.
So as I said, the pharma industry in general seems to be aware of this, because they're using horse and cow urine in pharmaceutical products. And for those who are against animal cruelty out there, there are farms where animals, cows and horses, are. Go on, you continue. You tell the story there, because it infuriates me. I can't even talk about it.
I know that in North America alone, at least back in the 80s, it could be worse now. There was 500 horse farms just in North America, with horses standing in stalls, being forced to drink water, or either that or they don't give them enough water. But they've got tubes sewn into their bladder, and they're constantly draining them to keep them in a terrible state constantly. And some people do rescue these horses, but they've got them in there stealing their urine permanently because they don't want to let the secret out to humans.
And where's this urine going? What products are they putting it into?
One of the most common ones is murine eye drops. It stands for mare's urine. It's urine. It's mare urine. So you're putting horse piss in your eyes when you could be using your own. Premarin is a very common drug for women going through menopause. It's hormone replacement therapy. And Premarin, again, it's right in the name. It stands for pregnant mare urine. There's urokinase, is a miracle blood clot thinner. When people are having heart surgery, open heart surgery, they put them urokinase so that the blood stays flowing nicely. That is directly one of the compounds listed in urine. I know that Merck, the owner of Porta Johns, when at least in America, when you see the porta potties around construction sites or at baseball games, the owner of Portageon of America has a contract with Merck Pharmaceuticals, and back in the 80s, he was making $500 million a year selling. Men turn to the side in those urinals and pee in the kind of the sidewall thing. And I have him on video. Um, there was been one urine therapy movie made. It was called Urine Good Health, like you're in good health, but it was Urine Good Health, and it was made by Eli Cabilio. And he went and interviewed this guy, and the CEO of the company takes you into one of his porta-john and lifts up the container where the men pee off to the side and shows you that they have a catch underneath there that grabs the urea. And the urea is an incredible compound, and he sells it to the pharmaceutical companies. In China, they secretly collect all the urine from the public urinals and make billions of dollars a year selling it to the pharmaceutical companies. So they know all about it. And they know all about distilled water too. Otherwise, there wouldn't be these ridiculous fake science pages. I mean, the good thing is if anybody looks into distilled water beyond these articles that slap you in the face, you'll find that about 95% of the knowledge on it is people telling the truth about it. Mm. But they've got a couple of fake science articles that, like you said, strangely seem to always appear in the face of your search engines. It's just always, no matter where you look, you see the same early death article. And I'm working on writing an article called Long Life Comes from Drinking Distilled Water. And we'll see if we can get that one up there on Google. They say it's just a matter of how many times people look for it. So I think we need that article up there instead.
The other argument is pH level. Now, the distilled water has a low pH, or an acidic, slightly on the acidic side, and that if you drink it, you become acidic, and we're supposed to be alkaline. Now, I know because I've done it, and I know plenty of people who do it. The old lemon juice in the morning. Lemon is acidic, but when you drink it, it alkalizes. That's the case for a lot of things. So if distilled water is slightly acidic, is it also doing that the opposite and becoming an alkalizing component in the body?
Exactly. That's exactly what they do, and they try to scare you away from it by they tell you don't drink distilled water because it will make you acidic. And they just lead you on with maybe a normal common sense way of thinking that if you drink something acidic, it's going to make you acidic. But it doesn't work that way. Like you said, with lemon, it's acidic, but it's the effect you want to look at. And the effect of distilled water is it makes you perfectly alkaline. And it is the water. Well, see, distilled is the condition of it. What your body wants is pure water. And whenever you make water pure, its condition by default becomes distilled. And what's going on there, like you said in the beginning, that distilled water is a body of nothing but spherically negatively charged magnets, and they're all pushing away from each other. That's what makes it distilled. It's not still anymore. As soon as you start throwing positive objects in your visualization field, and those things start getting clogged up with objects all over them, now you've got interference in the way, and there's not as much perfect magnetic pushing. And you get clumps, and you get bigger and bigger clumps, and things hanging onto each other. Now it's not a free-flowing water. But Dr. Hanish said he called distilled water the most molecularly unstable water that there is. And that's because of that pure negative charge, and there's no friction in the way. And
which is another argument for not drinking it. It's unstable. In and of itself doesn't say anything, but it just doesn't sound like a good thing. Don't drink it, it's unstable.
I guess we could refer to Mother Nature here to help us out. Come on, lend us a hand. Mother Nature says that the only type of water she produces, and this is probably the most number one thing people can use to help them feel okay about drinking distilled water and to deal with in their minds these psychotic crimes against humanity's articles. These articles are literally murdering people. The longer these articles stay up, the more people are going to die. Because it's keeping people off of it. So it needs to come off.
Okay, I want to just throw some different subjects at you, and let me know if you've had any testimonials or personal experience with it. Um, parasites. Parasites are a huge health problem, which I don't think that many people are that aware of. But are you aware of either distilled water or urine having an effect of flushing and detoxing the body of parasites?
Absolutely. And I'm speaking to you through 1,000 case history. I have over 20 books on urine therapy. I probably have close to 10 books on distilled waters, and these are all from all over the planet. Um, and you look at fruit juicing too, and what you start to notice across the board is the testimonials are all the same. The body melts all garbage out of it, and then there's a flushing and a rejuvenation of youth is the basic premise. Especially with urine, extra. Always in the urine therapy books, they say to always drink urine fresh within 10 or 15 minutes. Because the ammonia content starts shooting up. The urea is oxidized by oxygen as soon as it hits the air, and it starts fermenting into ammonia. And this is what, over time, actually makes it valuable and incredibly useful in industry, is the amount of ammonia, hence nitrogen, shoots through the roof. And so that's something else we can talk about is industrial uses of urine. But I have seen, the only time I've seen them specifically say to wait more than 10 or 15 minutes to drink your urine is if you had parasites and worms. They said to age it for 18 to 24 hours first. And they just want you to bump up the ammonia content a little bit because it gives it an extra little kick on the critters in your system.
Age it in a sealed container or age
Uh,
it in the open air?
Perfect question. A slightly sealed container. Because you want to let a little bit of it needs to get oxygen to it to ferment. But if it's totally sealed, it won't get it. But if it's totally open, you're going to have all kinds of things from the air constantly landing in it and trying to grow in it. So they say a loosely placed tuft of cotton or a loosely placed cork, or if it's a bottle with a screw lid, just put it on just barely. If you clamp it down right from day one and then leave it there for 30 days, it will kind of have a little sucking sound when you open it because it's been trying to oxidize and it creates an internal pressure. So it helps to keep it uncapped a little.
Okay, so that's interesting. Parasites. So 18 to 24 hours in a lightly covered container. Is it like a one dose thing?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that.
Okay, I'll see if I can find out. Okay. Now, the other thing that's getting a lot of attention, because if what you're saying is that any inorganic material can be pulled from the body with this water, chemtrails, big news, people are getting sick. We've also got this phenomenon called Morgellons, which doesn't officially exist, apparently, but people are suffering tremendously. If they are what it's been sort of suggested that they are, which is fibers and inorganic material that people are pulling out of their skin, have you had any testimonials, come across any information of people having been able to improve or even cure something as chronic as Morgellons?
I haven't met somebody with full-blown Morgellons. I know that Caroline Carter over in Cyprus is working on Morgellons victims, and I talked to her and gave her the download about it. But I know myself early on, I had some itching on the back of my neck and the tops of my forearms, and that's almost entirely gone away. It seems like there's been some people get little red dots or white dots on their skin, and from the Morgellons, these little kind of plasticky areas, those have stopped. But what you kind of come to after a while, when you just, the list goes on, and no matter what disease you look up, you just see it handling everyone. After a while, you start to feel like you don't really even need to know whether or not you've heard a case history because the mechanism is the same. And like you said, even the nanobots They're inorganic creatures, and I don't care how small they make themselves, they're not going to avoid water.
Mm.
They're not going to hide from water molecules. They're not going to hide from the electrical magnetic pull of distilled water. And I haven't seen it fail in anything. And even in the urine therapy world, people can be 3 days away from dying. And that's a lot of the cases are like that because those are people that finally get desperate enough to try it. And just almost 99% of the time, it even pulls them away from death's door. Once in a great while, if somebody's just so, hours away from dying, it might not pull them back. But literally, people with 2-day death sentences, if they just start hitting the water, they create that river of life inside them. Just
Can
back
the same
up
be said for just distilled water here, or are you talking about urine specifically?
yeah, I'm glad you keep bringing that up. Any of these waters, it could be fruit juices, it could be precipitation, it could be urine, it could be machine-made distilled water. And that's the importance of this knowledge, is it really opens up the field of the waters of life choices. We have many flavors besides the yucky urine flavor. Um, but I want to, you had said earlier about the 95% and the 5%. It is largely the water's doing the cleaning part, but I don't want to anger people in the urine therapy. Well, that 5% of those excess ingredients are incredibly useful, and your body loves recycling them, so they are helpful. Um,
It's almost like what you were saying before, using homeopathy as an analogy, that every time you dilute a homeopathic remedy, it becomes stronger and stronger. And I've been using homeopathy for many years.
okay,
And for people who don't know, that the the lower, like a remedy comes in something like a what they call 30C. So it's been distilled, or it's been reduced 30 times.
right,
And you would use a remedy like that for the physical body in an acute situation. Or you can go up to 200, which is, it's been diluted 200 times, and it becomes more and more subtle. There's less and less of the original substance in it, but it works at deeper levels. So when you're looking at the more mental, spiritual, psychological, and constitutional, you go more and more distilled. So in the same way, it's like our bodies are a homeopathic machine as well. If every time you recycle your own water, you're diluting it more and more in the homeopathic sense,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, and therefore working at deeper and deeper levels.
that's an excellent point.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah, I hadn't put that part of it together, but that is perfectly spoken. Yeah, I mean, I talk about how when you keep, gets distilled and distilled, but you're right too. If you got the essence of cancer in you, you're creating a stronger and stronger homeopathic formula against that cancer or tuberculosis or whatever disease it is you have. That's a great point.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the spiritual side of things, because there's a lot of attention at the moment on the pineal gland, decalcifying the pineal gland, awakening the pineal, or activating the pineal. Um, so drinking distilled water alone, let's leave urine out of it for now, but just distilled water. What if, is that actually doing that very thing? It's unclogging and cleaning up the pineal gland.
Yes, fortunately and unfortunately, there's two giant arteries that lead to the pineal, and they are part of what, when it gets going at high speed, when you go to sleep, uh, they kind of create a pine cone path, a double twisted helix path around the pine cone and back down it and over again through these two twisted arteries. And they, at high speed, they create an electromagnetic force field that David Wilcock so nicely explained in his video, An Explanation of the Pineal Gland. And that really helped me to see, too, the importance of water. I mean, one, we've also got the fact that distilled water decalcifies the sodium fluoride, which is an inorganic matter, and so it works exactly the same here. And so it decalcifies it. Um, but once you get cleaned out, now you've got even more and more pure water, creating a better and better electromagnetic force field around the pineal gland, so you can astral travel better, so you can access your spiritual powers better.
And again, those
Uh,
sacred, those ancient papyrus and texts that you'd mentioned before talks about the spiritual aspect of drinking, well, in that case, urine, but distilled water, really.
yeah, and yeah, and I have a high recommendation on my website, aquariusthewaterbearer.com. Underneath books, I have a free PDF to the book The Water of Life by John Armstrong. And it's a urine therapy book, but you can read it again. You don't even have to, omit the word urine in there, and you can just replace it with distilled water or fruit juice. But it's the important thing is to read the testimonials in that book of what happens when people fast for 30 to 40 days on urine, or you can say distilled waters. Um, and that will really give you an idea of what putting this river of life through the body does to us.
So, what kind of stories are you hearing from people, and what are your own? What's your own testimony, or from a spiritual perspective, of drinking a gallon, gallon and a half, 4 to 6 liters of distilled water a day? What's happening for
Um,
people?
some people are, I mean, I've started to keep a file now called Third Eye Blindness because I'm getting testimonials. I mean, if we're going to keep us focused on the spiritual part of people having crown chakra bursts, um, uh, or a golden glow around their head that is there whether they close their eyes or not. I myself, my intuition is better. I'm not good at astral projecting yet. I I feel much calmer inside. Um, I can read a lot better. I used to have a lot of ADD kind of problems with staying focused in a book. I would get distracted halfway through the sentence. And it still happens to me some, but I definitely notice an increase of my ability. Um, my teeth have gotten whiter. My wife is an artist, and she knows colors and paint, and she will testify to that.
You have great teeth, by the way.
uh, I've lost quite a few to dental fluorosis. It seems like there's a point if they get too far corroded. If they're on their way to falling apart, they're just going to fall apart. But it seems like the ones that weren't too far corroded, they've come back to life, and the yellow has gone away largely. There's still a little bit. Also, I have probably the most serious thing I have is the serious toenail fungus, and I put a nasty video of it on my Facebook page. But I did so because I have my own problems with addiction to. I used food my whole life to lift me out of moods like depression, and I had alcoholism in my family. But it took me a long time. I never started drinking, luckily, but it took me a long time to realize that I was using food because of that sugar. It's the alcohol that turns into sugar really quick and affects the alcoholic. But also, when you eat junk food, um, even just baked potatoes. I mean, a spoonful of potato turns into sugar faster than a spoonful of sugar. I mean, turns into glucose faster than a spoonful of sugar will turn into glucose. And so you literally get high when you eat food, when you consume excitotoxins. And I've slowly we've done a lot better with fruit juices and intermittent fasting. I've done a couple of 5-day fasts, 2 7-day fasts. And in the past couple of months, I've been a lot better at doing more and more fruit juice. And my toenails have started to grow in. Well, that's why I made the video. I noticed there was about a 1/4 inch of brand new pink toenail growth it started when I was 15. I'm 42 now. But for the past 2 decades, they've been entirely brownish yellow because that fungus had penetrated all the way to the production center, which is called the matrix. And I just looked down the other day and I noticed there was a 1/4 inch of brand new pink growth. And so because I finally started taking my own advice about the gallon a day or the 4 liters, it's actually started to push out the fungus. And so I'm going to keep an ongoing video testimonial of that.
Actually, I can testify to that as well. I got a splinter or something stabbed up under my fingernail just before going to Thailand last year. And the humidity in the environment in Thailand is not good for wounds. And that thumbnail did not look very good at all by the time I got back. And since drinking the water, it's almost healed. And it's only been, what have I done, 4 weeks, 3 4 weeks, and I'm not at the gallon a day level. So
Nice.
that's one of the things I've noticed. The other question I've got is weight, obesity, and cellulite, as
Okay.
another form of fat. Cellulite is a vile and evil curse. It's, because it doesn't seem to matter. You don't have to be overweight to have it. I've seen some young, skinny legs, that have got bad cases of cellulite. It's like, that's just cruel. Um, does distilled water dissolve or pull out fat, whether it's in the form of cellulite or, excess weight or whatever it looks like?
Yes. And what also one of the reasons for fat is it's the way that your body encapsulates toxins.
Uh,
Um, the body only has a certain top speed at which it can eject garbage. And when you exceed that rate, the body never makes mistakes. And in order to keep you alive in that moment, because it only let the blood get to a certain toxic level, it can't only get, it keeps it real right on. And so when you're exceeding that rate, to keep you alive, it starts storing all of your excess toxins in places that aren't vital to you at that moment, like in between your bones. It encapsulates in fat. Warts are deposits of really toxic stuff, and actually it's so toxic that it makes a pillow, it makes a holding chamber for it outside the body. It encapsulates it, and people's warts fall off as well when they start doing this. Um, so those toxins are in the fat, and so when you start, loosening everything up, that comes out, and then I don't know if it, I guess you would also eject the fat or you would burn it. Um, uh, Obesity cases, I mean, it just melts people away, and I use that word a lot because that's what you start. It just seems to be the word that best describes what happens to people. Um, and I should make sure I mention the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead.
Loved it.
I mean, it's just proof right in front of your eyes. It's two people that do 60 days of fruit juicing, and they're overweight, and they're ashen, and they're gray, and they have sour personalities, and all of those things go to the opposite. Just like I was talking about Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth. And of course, if the movie went along on even longer, you would see them, really come down to. It pretty much brings, if you really go for it, it can bring you to the 29-year-old perfect version of yourself. It melts you back to that, and then the body flourishes.
I don't know if this has
But
happened in America, but that movie has become an industry in and of itself here in Australia. There's a supermarket chain that
really,
has a display set up with a television while they're showing the documentary. They've brought out their own range of fruit juices and information products. There's a whole industry built around this now. But not to take anything away from that, from the power of the message in this film. It's an extraordinary story. Um, I shared it a couple of months back before I knew about your work,
oh,
um, and had friends inspired friends to go on fasts, which was fun. Um, but just uh, watching two people kind of counteract the propaganda was great too, because they lived on nothing but fruit juice for 60
yeah,
days. There was no food at all. And we're not supposed to be able to do that according to, what we've been told. Um, and these guys not only survived, they flourished, they healed. Um, I don't even know how to explain the difference between how they looked at the beginning and the end of this film.
And anytime you read any case study, whether it's fruit juice, urine, or water fasting, that's exactly what happens. I mean, it gets even sillier with urine fasting. They aren't even, at least in the juice fasting, we'll say, okay, well, they get all the nutrients from the juice. People urine fasting going 30 and 40 days. The guy that wrote The Water of Life had tuberculosis, and they told him he was dead in 2 months. And he went on a 45-day urine fast and completely cured himself, and then spent the rest of his life curing 20,000 other people who are at death's door. And that book is full of the highlights of the testimonials.
He wasn't a doctor either, was he?
No, he's just one of us. Doctors, tend to be the ones that are least likely to report this because they're the most severely miseducated, and it's not their fault. And they could all be given this knowledge, and they would love it. They're all witnessing. I know one doctor. He said basically all I do is help people die.
Oh, that's so
Because
sad.
they just keep giving them pills, and they're not told that there's any other way to go, and they're told that we are at the pinnacle of our medical technology, and we're at the pinnacle of our medical barbarism.
Mm. Yes, I'll go along with that.
Going back to your splinter before you go, you keep that next. It reminded me of one of the things in the urine therapy world that I could never understand before, and it again ended up coming back to the magnetism of the water. Over and over, these case studies of splinters in the urine therapy world, where people put a bandage soaked with urine on the splinter site, and within a day or 2 days, they find the splinter in the bandage. And I said, "Well, that's awesome." And the same thing with kidney stones; it melts the kidney stones. And I said, "Well, that's awesome." And yeah, and again, there's no explanation in the urine therapy books of how it's doing it. And that one specifically, pulling the splinter out, it's the magnetism. And the splinter is made out of inorganic matter. And so that shield of pure water sitting out there on the surface is literally putting a magnetic pull on that splinter. And that finally answered for me how it was extracting splinters. I mean,
So you could make
normal,
a compress of either urine or just distilled water, perhaps, and use that on any wound, any foreign matter. That's okay. That's amazing.
yeah,
What about? I heard you make the statement that urine becomes whatever your body needs it to become, kind of thing. So if they're making eye drops with horse urine or cow urine or whatever, if we were to put our own urine in our eyes, it benefits the eyes. If you put it in the ears, it benefits the ears, like as an eardrop for an earache. If you put it under the tongue, the glands read it, create the necessary antibodies, the whole body benefits. You put it on the skin, it'll heal a wound, it becomes the skin, it nourishes the skin. So it just sounds like the most. I mean, it's the philosopher's stone. It is the elixir of life. It is the fountain of youth.
Yeah, it's the water of life. They actually labeled it accurately. It's the water of life. And the baby, the term you're looking for to describe it when you're doing this visualization is a wonderful term. It's called living liquid tissue.
Oh, okay.
And that's what it becomes a cut. If you have a cut, it becomes your eyes, becomes your ears. And the biggest thing to look at is the baby floats in urine for 9 months. The amniotic fluid is urine. For the first 3 months, it's your mom's urine. For the remaining 6 months, it's your urine. There's no cap on the genitals. The umbilical cord, is on the intestines. And that shows you that's where waste goes, is out the intestines. The baby is peeing into that space. And the baby is creating the water that breaks at birth. And the baby is breathing like a fish when it's in there. And that water is literally, that living liquid tissue is literally what becomes your physical body. And
you just made me think of something, because I used to feel really good about the fact that I had water births. I gave I've got 3 kids. 2 of them were born in water. But now I'm just having this sort of image of them going from floating in this urine, sort of pure distilled water, into a bath full of tap water,
Hey,
getting their first mouthful outside of my body is tap water. Yeah,
thanks, Ma.
yeah. Thanks for that.
That's an important thing for people to focus on if they want to, they keep coming back to, well, yeah, but isn't urine a toxic waste product? Well, just ask yourself, how can it be that if you float in it from day one as a baby?
Well, you're not just floating in it; you are drinking it. I mean,
You're breathing
you're
it. You're
breathing it.
breathing
Yeah.
fish. And that's a very important thing to tie us into alchemy. We are talking about, nobody needs to look any further to figure out what alchemy is about. It it's 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 this water. The whole thing about turning lead into gold. That's what you do when you flow these waters through your body, and that's what you see when you watch Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. You watch these people who are leaden become golden.
Mm.
And so the baby is the Ouroboros or the Ouroboros, the alchemical, one of the biggest symbols of all time is the snake eating its tail, round and round. That is exactly what the baby is when it's in there. It's drinking in the water, it's peeing it out. It's drinking in, it's peeing it out. And when you resume urine therapy, all you are doing is resuming what you used to do earlier in your life.
And the other thing you pointed out was fountains all around the world are decorated with often little boys, but sometimes men,
Yeah,
peeing into
girl.
fountains, which is then
Yeah,
recycled and peed back into the fountain.
yeah. It's a hidden pictogram for the fountain of youth.
Okay, we've covered that there are many, many health benefits to drinking distilled water. But for people who want to get started on this, they can do what I've done and just go down to the local supermarket, and I get it in 2 litre bottles. I clean the supermarket out every few days. They only stock about 6 to 8 bottles of it at a time, and get started that way. It's the cheapest way to get started. Um, and I was concerned at first that buying it in plastic bottles, it was going to taste like plastic and stuff, but actually, it's not. It's quite fine.
Yeah,
The one I'm buying is fine. Um, and it's actually comparable to the water that I was already buying because I haven't drank tap water for many years, but I've been buying my own water. And the one I bought, had been buying for 3 or 4 years, was the best tasting water that I'd come across. And this is comparable to it. I was really, really surprised. Um, and try to start, and as you mentioned, the volume is what's important as well. So to aim for a gallon, gallon and a half, or 4 to 6 litres, which does sound like, and it is a lot of water. Um, I was also concerned that my body wouldn't cope initially with that kind of volume, but I pee more. That's it. Um, there's been no adverse kind of effects from drinking that sort of volume. I haven't hit 4 litres yet, I have to say. 3's been the maximum I've gotten through in a day. Um, we've talked about spiritual benefits as well. Pineal gland decalcification, activation, and what comes with that. We've covered that the medical industry and pharmaceutical industry are well aware of the benefits of urine and distilled water. Um, the other thing I wanted to touch on was the anti-aging and sort of longevity that people talk about. We've got hair going back to its original color, skin, loss of wrinkles and firming of the skin. People, there is a clip that you and I are both aware of a 70-year-old
mm,
black woman in America who looks, I don't know, 30 maybe, a good
yeah.
30. She's incredible. She just drinks distilled water that she collects, or rainwater, I believe, that she collects,
I
and
think
fruit juices.
rain and fruit juices is drinks, two of the possible distilled water choices. And if you want to find on YouTube, I think you search for 70-year-old woman discovers fountain of youth. It's just a 5-minute clip, but it is again a video documentation of what it. And her husband is 70, so it's a great comparison. He's hugely obese, gray hair, diabetic, and takes at least 4 different prescription pills.
Mm.
She's just the opposite, doesn't take any prescription pills. There's another movie called Forks Over Knives that people should know about too, and it's about using your fork to choose your health and what you put in your mouth versus the knife later down the road in the hospital.
Mm.
So use your fork over knives. That's a good one too. Uh,
And what is that focusing on?
it's about choosing what you eat. To use a fork to put what you choosing what you put in your mouth is about health and about how eating right makes you healthy. So it's another movie focusing on the same thing.
Is it talking about raw food over cooked food or that kind
Yeah,
of
and
thing?
just in general, the quality of food. Yeah, yeah, and how it you want living things.
So
uh,
what else is there in the terms of the anti-aging sort of more cosmetic benefits of distilled
um,
water?
uh, burns. That I mean, that's something some people are horribly disfigured, and you can keep even if it's an old burn that you think you have a permanent scar from. You can start sleeping at night with a bandage on that, and it will you'll just watch it slowly over time melt the scar, and new skin will form. Um,
Can the same be said
especially,
for any scarring?
yeah, especially people with brand new burns. That's a great Japanese and Asian Chinese families keep on average 30 to 40 gallons of aged urine available for emergencies. If the boy pulls a pot of boiling water off the stove and burns his whole body, they wrap his whole body in bandages and soak him once a day in urine. Then they heal with no scars.
Yeah,
Um,
my mother and grandmother did something similar. It wasn't urine. They always kept a cold pot of tea nearby for that very reason. There was something about the tannins in tea.
huh.
And my uncle, when he was a kid, back in the old days when my grandmother used to make her own starch for ironing, it was boiled, and my uncle ran into her while she had the pot of boiling starch, and it went all down his back. And they bathed him with nothing but cold tea. When I
Hmm.
was a kid, my mum was doing the ironing. She said, "Don't touch the iron." So, flat hand on a hot iron. Mum did the same thing, just bathed it with cold tea, um, and not a scar, healed perfectly. But I don't think it works anymore. There is something that they've done with tea, and I think it has something to do with fluoride, believe it or
Uh,
not. Um, that they use fluoridated water in the processing of tea, and it's stripped the tannins or whatever it was that used to work.
mhm.
It doesn't do it anymore. So I've never done it because I was told by my mum, don't bother, it doesn't work anymore. Um, but interesting to know that you could keep urine on hand for the same thing for
Yeah, and
burns.
which since you mentioned tea, and we're talking to everybody that's trying to clean themselves out and get away from fluoride. A lot of fluoride conscious people still don't know that tea is one of the worst sources of fluoride. Um,
Black tea?
Unfortunately, green, white, and black tea
Mm.
are all the same plant. Um, White tea is young green tea, and black tea is aged green tea. So it's the same plant. The problem with it, and I believe that this is the exact reason why they're pushing everybody to drink their green tea to get their antioxidants. Well, it may have that in it, but uh, it unfortunately collects more fluoride and aluminum from the air, soil, and water more than any other edible plant on the planet. So much so that one cup of tea has the equivalent of anywhere from 14 to 20 liters of city tap water's worth of fluoride in it.
Oh my
It's a
God.
massive. It can have as much as 8 milligrams of fluoride. Uh,
So
and,
it
and
wouldn't
it
matter if you were drinking organic tea or not.
doesn't matter where it's grown on the planet. And it's just that one plant. There's if you need there's yerba mate. There's other types of tea that'll give you a stimulant. Other teas that are made from herbs, those are fine. It's just the green tea plant. And fluoride and aluminum are real jerks on their own, but you put them in combination and they're a real lose lose situation. The fluoride debilitates the blood brain barrier and allows 600 times more aluminum to pass into the brain. And so there's probably a big source of your Alzheimer's problem.
Mm.
Uh, so most people don't know that, and that's why fluoride is the number one ingredient in Prozac and most antidepressants because it makes you mellow, and that's why people's tea tends to, can
Calm
make
them.
calm. Yeah, but I guess if you drink enough of it, you get all the caffeine to overpower the fluoride in the moment. But it's it's incredibly toxic.
Okay, I
Um,
didn't know that, and that's another thing
uh,
that's going to make me angry for a while.
yeah, Uh, and so we got away from beauty tips and whatever else it does to you and anti-aging effects. One thing, a supermodel's biggest secret, or one of them, is that they splash fresh urine on their face at night before they go to bed. And they let it air dry, and then they wash it off in the morning. The urea in urine enables each individual skin cell to hold its maximum amount of water, so they plump up. Babies have super plump skin. And so wrinkles are just lines of decrepit skin cells. And so, right at the same time that they're giving them the urea so they can hold the max amount of water, in that urine, you're also offering them the ultimate water in the universe. And so, it's a win win for your skin there. And you can find just even in real time, you can take a bowl of urine if you want to see that this works. You can just keep rubbing your hands in it. And within 10 minutes, your hands will have a buttery leather feel that will last. Or if you have the privacy at home, don't just wait until you go to bed. Um, if you want to, every time you pee, put a little splash of urine on your face. You will see just in 2 or 3 coats of doing that, your skin immediately looks better.
Actually, I will reveal. I did an experiment. um, my skin, especially if because I'm not drinking enough water, obviously dehydrated, but when it's cold and cold and windy in particular, my skin will just dry out and go white and flaky. It's horrible. So the other day, the weather turned. It did exactly that. I could feel myself sort of shriveling up in the moment. I took some urine and I just did it from the elbows down on my arms and hands. I just grabbed a cotton wipe and rubbed it in to see. And the difference was extraordinary between the bottom half of my arm and the rest of my skin, and it stayed that way. It didn't
Yeah.
wear off. It was moisturized, looked moisturized and hydrated, and just a difference in color. I mean, it was just amazing.
This will melt cataracts as well if you're having eye vision problems. Even if you don't put drops in your eyes. I know one lady who's not touching urine at all, and after 3 months of a gallon a day, she's 70 years old. She had to go to take her driver's license and get a new eye test, and the examiner was puzzled because she now had 20/20 vision after 45 years of being required by law to wear driving glasses. He unchecked the box on her license, and now she drives without her glasses. Uh,
And she's
her
just
mother
drinking a gallon a day of distilled water.
of distilled water, not touching urine, and not putting it in her eyes. She wasn't even trying to correct her eyes. And that's wonderful proof. That's also what's happening with me in my toenails. I haven't been um, on it enough on a daily basis to go through the hassle of sitting with my feet in a pool of urine or in a bucket of urine. And so the new nail growth is happening because from the inside out, my body is becoming so wonderfully alkaline that the fungus can't exist.
Mm.
It can't, they have to have that acid environment to live. So that's happening from the inside out with her eyes. And her mother is 90 years old and is also drinking a gallon a day. And she just recently went to the eye doctor for a standard exam, and he lowered the prescription strength of her eyeglasses at 90 years old.
Yay!
Yeah. Um, so,
Can we actually? It just made me think of something. I don't know why, but my head's gone there. Um, Autism and ADD often are associated with heavy metal toxicity, mercury in particular. Many claim acquired through vaccinations, but it's another story. Whatever the cause, If it is a heavy metal toxicity in the brain, then distilled water, based on what we've talked about so far, should in fact detox the body of that.
I don't even need to come on the show anymore. I mean, that's why the distilled water books are so small. You've got it. It's a magnetic vacuum for the body.
Have you got any testimonials about kids in particular, I guess, but anybody with these conditions improving?
Uh, I do have for I'll have to check for autism. I don't think I've ever specifically checked with that. I do have a waitress friend whose son had autism, and she wanted to know about it for that. And I haven't checked back with her to see what she's happened. I should be able to get you something real on that. But definitely with thinking problems, all thinking issues clear up. So I don't know why autism wouldn't also, but depression, anxiety, clarity, um, they all clear up. Clarity gets clearer.
Clarity gets clearer. For anybody listening to this who is already on this road or starts down this road as a result of watching it, if they have results, please, if anybody has a testimonial, send them to Andrew because he's compiling um, quite an extensive library of testimonials, and it would be good to have them all in one place. Whether it's urine or distilled water or fruit juice, whatever you're doing, um, then please send your testimonials forward. Um,
My my email is contact at andrewnortonweber.com.
Thank you. um, that's because that's such a huge subject, and it's a very controversial subject. Um,
The autism.
Autism thing, I mean, it's controversial for a number of reasons. Firstly, the cause and whether or not it's vaccinations or whether it's something else, whether it in fact can be healed, um, and it's such a sad illness because
Mm,
of
yeah,
the lack of relationship that results between and the lack of bonding between family members and parents and their children as a result of that. That's the saddest part, um, from my experience dealing with the parents of these children. Um, so, God, if you could get some results and some testimonials in regards to that, that would be really, really powerful.
okay.
Is there anything we've covered a lot? But is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to before we wrap this up?
Sure. We need to cover detox symptoms. Yeah, yeah. Uh, but people need to know that when they start drinking this, when we describe this ability to magnetically rip garbage out of the body, it's going to mean that things are going to start to move. And we want to make sure that people do not confuse the detox symptoms with as though the distilled waters are making them sick. It's not, it's literally moving garbage out of you. And these could range from nausea to flu like symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, headaches, rashes in weird places, pimples in weird places, terrible breath, terrible armpit smell, terrible feces, um, especially feces that start to smell like petroleum products. You just can't believe the stuff that starts coming out of you. And they may be flashes of nausea or flashes of flu-like symptoms, and it's just the garbage. It has to come out, and better out than in. But it's proving to you in real time that it is melting the garbage, and it's only temporary. That's the most important thing people have to know. And you should actually be glad because you're actually witnessing garbage come out of you. Uh, my wife, at one point, she has a history of breast cancer. And when we were hitting the waters hard, she had a massive eruption of sores all over her breasts. And we feel that right then and there, she ejected future breast cancer. And it looks like people's different detox reactions they're based upon where the stuff is stored in their body and how their body chooses to eject it. Um, but it's just all evidence that garbage is melting out of you. And you can use urine topically, if you do have rashes and things, you can also use it to help expedite the detox process from the outside by helping to heal the wounds from the eruptions or whatever you have. Um, what else? There's two other. They tell you that another thing they use to scare you from distilled water is that it will leach minerals from the air. And this is another on purpose half truth, because yes, it does do that, but that's only because it's the most magnetically strong water in existence. And spring waters and other waters would be doing that. It's just that they've already got a load. They're already clogged up with junk. And so, yes, when you have pristine, brand new distilled water, there's inorganic matter floating in the air, and whatever matter has to be floating by, as soon as you reveal that water to existence, to the world, it's going to start pulling inorganic matter towards it. And so they claim right then there that it leaches carbon dioxide from the air and it becomes acidic. Well, I mean, you're talking about minute amounts versus spring water, which they're advocating instead, is loaded with the very things that you're complaining about, the distilled water leaches in the air. I mean, it's got like a pile of stuff in it compared to maybe a speck or two in the distilled water. And that's also, according to how long you also expose it to the air. So, of course, you keep it capped. But it's absolutely not. It's another joke reason. And the fourth joke reason, they tell you that it leaches minerals from your food when you cook with it. Again, it's another on purpose. Yes, it does do this, but the reason it's doing it is because when you cook your food, you flip the charge on it. You turn that living matter into dead matter. And then, yes, absolutely, the still water is going to start leaching from that dead object, because that's all it does is rip dead objects to pieces.
So if you were to steam your vegetables with distilled water, what do you end up with?
Well, however long and hot you cook it is exactly how much life force you're going to rip away from it. And there's Curlian photography that shows fresh broccoli compared to a photo of steamed broccoli. And when it's steamed, it does still have a little bit of life force left. If you cook it all the way, you eventually get to a completely gray photograph. There'll be no purple, blue aura around the food. But when it's not cooked, the broccoli has a gorgeous aura around it. When it's steamed, it's got a few little spots of aura poking out. But it doesn't matter whether I guess if you're cooking it with spring water versus, it's kind of got some dirt in it. So it's, bathing your water in dirt. So it's better to cook it in distilled water. But it's not going to leach minerals from the food.
Not organic minerals anyway that you need.
Right. But whatever organic minerals are in there, the more that you kill them and flip the charge, then it can start leaching them. Yeah. But that's nice of water to do that because you don't want those anyways.
Yeah.
But the whole problem is you're cooking it in the first place. That's the false premise in the argument to begin with. Besides the fact, all waters, when you cook foods in them, start leaching it because you're destroying it. You're in the process of breaking it down. And water seems to be the cleaner on this planet. Water seems to be the mechanism that resets things. I'd like to talk about going back to the spiritual side more and focusing on how what we're all really hoping for is to overcome this tyranny of dark forces on the planet. This injects light into the body. And it's provable with an ohms meter. Ohms are units of resistance to electricity, harmful energy. And the dirtier, if you have well water, reverse osmosis water, and distilled water, and you stick an ohms meter in it, the cleaner the water is, the higher the ohms count goes up. And when it does this, you can also relate it to your own body. The more you clean yourself out, and the ohms meter has 2 electrodes. And when you grab those 2 electrodes, you can see from person to person, healthy person to sick person, the ohms level goes up and down. And so you can actually get a reading on how much resistance you have to harmful electricity. And as
Hang on, before you go on, how can we determine the difference between harmful and beneficial?
harmful hurts you and fries your skin, uh, the good stuff makes you feel good. It makes you glow.
But
Um,
how do we know that the by
well, we're
drinking
talking about.
distilled water
Uh-huh.
changes our uh, conductivity of electricity? If we're not conductive or less conductive to bad electricity, how can we be sure that we're also not less conductive to positive electricity?
Because you watch them start to glow. This is where the glow comes in. It starts to explain, even in the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, where they're ashen and gray at the beginning of the movie. They start to look glow, and their eyes start to sparkle, and their person, they start to look like they're full of life or light. Even the word light has a GH in it, a silent F. Life, lifed, and they're one and the same. Um, you just watch people get healthier, and the energy that we're talking about is Wilhelm Reich's orgone energy, or Tesla's radiant energy, or prana, mana, chi, life force, light force, the opposite of the dark side. um, and it's anecdotal. I don't personally have scientific studies. I mean, they're probably there because you can see there's photos of Kirlian photographs of people before healing mode and after healing mode, or during, and the amount of light in the Kirlian photograph. I
Mm.
mean, I guess that's the evidence that you're asking about. They're glowing more, or when they put their handprint on the plate, there's more light sparking off around it. And the opposite happens when the more dead you make your food, just like we were talking about earlier. When the more you steam the broccoli, the less of an aura it has. So you're watching, that's that life force that we're talking about. You can see it photographically dissolve. And you can feel it yourself. Everybody, when they start drinking a gallon a day, within 3 days, they start to have more energy. And you can see it in the testimonials, not only in the video. The 7-year-old woman discovers a fountain of youth. Look at that 7-year-old versus her husband. You see the life force there. And across the testimonials, when people say, and now my friends tell me that I glow, over and over again in these 30 and 40-day urine fast testimonials, there's always a tagline at the end. There's usually two things. And it's, a lot of these are with a 60 or 70-year-old person that was at death's door. And now my friends tell me that I look 20 or 30 years younger, and they tell me that I'm glowing. And it's not a glow that somebody with third eye vision can see, or can see auras. The layman can see it. And you are in this moment when you see somebody glowing, that's the fountain. They're overflowing with prana. That's the golden glow. It's the crown chakra burst, continually shooting out all that prana out of the center of their torus.
Is that only achieved with urine therapy though, or is that also achieved with distilled water?
All distilled waters, all four of them, and that's what the Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead movie helps to capture on photography too. Is they were drinking nothing but fruit juice.
Yeah. When you say the four of them, the fourth being, what did you say? Dew,
All,
snow.
all There's the three natural ones and the artificial, and the three natural ones are all precipitation, all the fruit juices and vegetable juices, and urine. All rain, mist, snow, dew, and fog are all newly made water.
You'd be hard pressed licking enough leaves to to consume a gallon and a half.
You would, but there are tribes that live in the jungles. Some dew collection is how entire towns and villages live in some places. In the jungles, they put clay pots underneath the tip of a big green leaf. And in the morning dew hits the bottom of the leaf, and the water trickles and dumps into the pot. And that's how they get all of their water. And these people are in incredible health. Um, where else? There's an article on the internet called "Air Wells, Dew Dams, and Fog Fences," and it shows you all around the world how different people have these contraptions collecting these free distilled waters. Now, there's an ancient Byzantine town in the Ukraine that somebody discovered earlier in this century, and on the hills surrounding the town, they found 13 ancient stone piles. And at the bottoms of the piles, they found these 3-inch terracotta pipes that led into the town. And they all led into the wells and the fountains in the town. And what they figured out was that these piles of rocks would get cool during the night. And then as the morning came, the morning sun hits it, and you got the morning warm air creeping in. Since it's a big pile of rocks, the inner part of the rocks stay cool because they're protected from the light by the outer rocks. But since it's rocks and there's all these air spaces, the wind meanders across through the pile of stone, and that new warm, moist morning air hits the cool rocks on the center and condenses on the rocks, and it would drip, drip, drip down to the bottom into the clay pipes and down into the town. And they estimated that each of these piles was producing 500 to 1,000 gallons per day. And that's, a lot of people ask about, getting free distilled water or cheaper sources of it. And definitely the air dams are one way. There's towns up on hilltops that have fog fences. They have these giant pieces of fabric stretched between poles. And as they're up at a misty mountaintop, the mist is continually hitting the fog sheet, and it drips and collects. You can have solar collectors, just a piece of glass over a box painted black, and that the sun hits the black, creates warm air. It hits the glass, tries to condense, and then you have it angled to one side, and again it drips into a pot.
So all of those methods would be preferable to just sticking a bucket out and collecting rainwater.
I believe so, because rain is a slightly older water. Dew and condensation and evaporation, those are the waters. Nature's hydrologic cycle, it's the evaporation point. That's the brand new water right there. And then it goes up to the clouds, and when it falls as rain, it's really new water, but it's not as new as the water right when it's evaporating. That's probably the most pristine water.
That was all very cool, very ingenious methods.
Yeah. Some people's entire roofs are covered with. There's an International Dew Society or Dew organization. You go to their website; they have houses where the entire rooftop is kind of an air chamber that allows condensation to happen. And on the roof lines of the house, there's these gutters that are just constantly collecting water and directing it towards a cistern. Another piece of proof, and this is about rain, Dr. Handley, you can Google Dr. Handley and distilled water, you'll see his great short article on distilled water, but he actually did studies on distilled waters and made a chart from, I think, 1865 to 1965, as people moved away from rainwater, as they moved more towards city centers, and they stopped using their cisterns. He made a chart of that, of the rate of people which moved from rainwater to city tap water. And then from the same time period again, from 1865 to 1965, he made a second chart of the rate of heart disease. And the heart disease chart went perfectly opposite to the other one. It went up, 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 as people got off of rainwater. So the rainwater was a pure water, keeping their pipes clean, moving the plaque out of the arteries. And as they started drinking tap water, which already has a load in it, the heart disease went up because they weren't putting a pure cleaner through the body.
And that includes a time prior to fluoride and
Exactly.
all of the other.
Yeah. Yeah. But we are talking about here what everybody is looking for to conquer the darkness on this planet. Distilled water, the more distilled you get to your body, the more of a conductor of life force you are. You start to glow. You literally on your own can coagulate and condense light here on this planet to help with this ridiculous amount of darkness. And monsters only operate in the dark. You shine a light on them and they scamper away. So this is about popping open monkeys, and it's as simple as getting people to drink water. And we don't want to lose people because you could, like you said, we've been careful, don't tend to talk about urine or do talk about it. If you want to get your grandmother clean, for instance, and but you don't want to talk about this any esoteric stuff. You don't want to talk about fluoride and chemtrails and dark forces. Don't mention it to her. Just talk to her about distilled water and fruit juices and show her videos that focus on health and just get her to focus on her health. But will help the rest of us as a byproduct is that she's going to light up her pineal gland. She's going to crack the calcification off of it. She's going to have a crown chakra burst, and she is going to be another lit up light bulb, which is a million times brighter than a light bulb that's off. And they say, one enlightened person can offset 8,000 people who are low vibrating or, whatever it is. So get as many people as you can on distilled waters, get as many people as you can to clean out the body. You are literally one by one lighting up monkeys.
So it seems like whether the question is, do you want to cure a disease? Do you want to clean out the body? Do you want to look younger? Do you want longevity? Do you want quality of life? Do you want spiritual awakening? Do you want to ensure ascension? Do you want to wake up the planet? Do you want to ground the light? Whatever the question, the answer could well be drink a gallon of distilled water a day.
It is. And that's why I sometimes start out with people, even though it's a little upfront and kind of abrasive almost to say this to people. I said, what I'm about to tell you is going to enable you to make all of your dreams come true. And it literally is that. All the things you fantasize about as a child, that you wish you could have superpowers, and all the things that they've held over our heads that are only the realm of movies and sorcerers and magicians. We are all that. And this is the key to opening that up on the ground level. I know that everybody's work that everybody does is of utmost equal importance to this. And yes, there are people that are incredibly high vibrating and psychic off the charts, and they're not healthy. And so, there's people all over the scale.
Mm.
And so they can bypass the junk in their body and still be, very well lit up. But just in general, across the board, whether you're a car mechanic or a psychic or a healer, this cleans your temple out. This cleans out, the body is the temple. It cleans out all the junk everywhere and enables you to do whatever it is that you want to do 1,000-fold better. It will light up your thing. Whatever, if you want to focus on how to build the coolest bicycle in the world, it will magnify your ability to do that. And you'll hear your own inner voice, just that much more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's yeah. I mean, I've started on this journey for myself. I've noticed changes physically. I've gone through detox symptoms. I've noticed concentration, um, and I've basically just switched the household water, so everybody in the house is drinking it. They're not. I haven't pushed them to reach a certain level of volume or anything. I've just whatever they drink is now just distilled water. And I'm seeing my kids go through, and I'm not saying anything. I'm just letting them go through.
Uh-huh.
And so I can speak from personal experience here in terms of the benefits. I am seeing it personally, and as I said a couple of times already, I haven't reached that magic volume yet. But it's still a huge improvement on what I used to do. I know that I could go through a day and realize I hadn't had a glass of water.
Yeah.
I may have had six coffees and a wine, but I hadn't had a glass of water. And that's not good. And I know it's not like I didn't know any different. But you just get caught up and you forget to
I'm really
have a
glad
glass.
I'm glad we waited a little while to do the interview, so you've had, you can speak from this perspective of having your own feelings about it and seeing it's already starting.
I mean, when I first came across the whole urine aspect of it, I mean, I I guess I had a typical response of gross. But the more I read, I have to say the information feels true. My head might not like it. Um, the psychologically, I don't, but it feels true,
Yeah.
and it feels like wisdom, true wisdom about who we are and how we're supposed to maintain ourselves, um, and how we're supposed to achieve and grow and evolve. It feels true. And I guess my attitude towards urine as a healer and as a tonic, or in any way I want to look at it, has changed. I mean, I've been able to rub it into my skin without any problems. I've put it on my face without any problems. Um, so my relationship to it is changing. And I think that if anybody wants to try and go there, to start with these baby steps, like rubbing it on your skin, um, make a homeopathic solution from it if you need to.
Or just
Um,
start peeing in a glass and looking at it. Just start. That's one of the first things I said. Stop peeing in the toilet. Pee in a glass, even if you're not going to drink it or touch it, just so you can actually start going. What does this look like? And so you can smell it. And you've been just so miseducated. That's the worst thing ever. Um, just take, like you said, baby steps to figure out and go slow with it. You know, taste your finger one time. It's not really that bad. And if you don't even, if you're hopping on the distilled water and the fruit juices, you can make it so you never even have to taste bad urine. You can wait until it looks this clear before you even, and it will get that clear and more. It's hard to believe, but it's just because of the steady intake of cooked food that's causing it. Uh,
but even for those people who don't want to go there, who never want to go there, they don't actually have to go there.
no, they
This
don't.
can be purely about distilled water, whether you go and buy it from the supermarket or whether you buy a distiller and do it
Re-
yourself. This can be
reflect.
done purely 100% with distilled water.
Yeah, and I'm just finding it looks like it takes a little bit longer with distilled water versus urine because it's not as distilled. It just doesn't have as strong of a magnetic power, and that's the only difference. Um, what I haven't seen a specific case study for is evil, but I'm having intuitive thoughts about it because I have seen case studies of depression, and they turn into happy people, and
Hmm.
even fat, sick, and nearly dead. You see these people that are miserable become happy people. I was wondering about this the other day, and I think I can feel, even though I've never seen a specific case study for take an evil person and either trick them to, or tie them down and make them drink. Well, I'll let you go in 30 days if you drink a gallon a day. I don't know, but I really think that a person that's dark, so to speak, I don't think that they could avoid being happy. I don't think they could avoid getting rid of their evil nature once all the garbage was flushed out of them. I haven't seen a specific case study, but it seems that way. I'm real curious about Dick Cheney and his new heart. What would happen if he started drinking a gallon a day? Or even it'd be funny if all these doctors Zoltan P. Rona, if she would, that put down distilled water. Okay, I want to see what happens to you if you drink a gallon a day of distilled water. I mean, are you really that afraid of it? Are you really telling us you're actually deathly afraid of pure water? You're deathly afraid of the only type of water that Mother Nature produces? That should be the biggest clue to everybody, is that whenever she makes new water, and I'm not talking about spring waters, rivers, lakes, and stream, that's old water. Like I said, the evaporation point, that's the brand new water. Rain is really new. Rain, mist, snow, dew, and fog. The waters in the plants are brand new. They've never touched garbage. Your urine is brand new. Uh, they're just perfect.
I know. What you brought up a question then, really. Dick Cheney.
Uh-huh.
How there's been studies done on people who have received organs
Mm-hmm.
and how that changes them because the cellular memory in the organ. So I wonder who owned that heart before Cheney did.
I see that as, the chances of it coming from somebody else that has as sour of a heart as him are pretty nil. I mean, all you got to do is have just a normal person. It doesn't even have to be an angel. Just a normal person's heart is going to change it. I mean, I'm very interested in that too. And I think it's way more than symbolic. To me, it's just right around the same time that that came out, I had started getting intuitive feelings and thought that the 100th monkey had popped and that we had reached the crescendo. And then that happened. And it just seemed to be part of that. I see it as it's just,
Well,
I mean, what a
it doesn't seem possible that if you could decalcify the pineal gland and actually have that open and activated, uh, along with that comes a sense of oneness and connection.
in feelings. I mean,
And yeah,
it's not sense of it. People are vibrating with it. And I mean, people should know this. This is what is coming. If you keep doing this, you will have a crown chakra burst and you will start to see white light inside your head. And I have a layman's testimonial about that. 3 months on distilled water. And he grew up on well water too. And so I think it takes a little bit longer. Fluoride is such a crazy compound that it's a little bit thicker. But 3 months out, he called me. He's like, Andrew, he said, I just had this, my head was just filled with white light. It was like the brightest stadium lights I've ever seen, except that it didn't hurt. And I was accompanied with a feeling of bliss, and I didn't want it to end. And he had no idea what he was describing to me. And that's a fantastic testimonial because he was describing to a T a crown chakra burst, but he's not somebody that's even studied it or could have told you what it was. And I immediately knew what he was talking about. And it's actually his mother that's the 70-year-old. Another funny, I mean, okay, so those are part of the third eye blindness testimonials. And now he can see that white light whenever he wants to. His mother also, who doesn't know anything about esoteric stuff, she went to her eye doctor. After the DMV test, she went to her eye doctor to get this confirmed. And he not only confirmed it, but now he's looking into distilled waters because of her, because he can't believe it. I was going to say, oh, she said to him, she said, and now I see this white light when I close my eyes. And at first he said, oh, that's impossible. And she insisted. And he said, well, that's just something old people
oh,
do.
yeah, really.
Yeah. Uh, and so don't let me forget to come back to the doctor about, I got a testimonial for you about smoking, but I want to stay with the white light. I forgot what I was going to say about that. Well, okay, I'll switch to the smoking one. A guy that's about 45 years old, he's been smoking since he was 15. And this is a new testimony that came to me. He's been smoking a pack a day for 30 years straight. And about a year ago, he started pounding a gallon a day of distilled water and never looked back. Changed his diet a little, got from basic cooked diet to definitely a lot more percentage of fruit. But he just went to a doctor for a basic checkup, and he had a lung scan. And the doctor came into him after the results of the lung scan and said, look, I've had a real crisis of consciousness of whether or not to tell you this. He said, because I can't tell that you've ever been a smoker.
What?
Yeah. And he had just recently been reporting to me, my friend, maybe a month or two prior, because he didn't quit smoking. He kept on smoking even though he got on the distilled water. And he said, Andrew, it's almost like I'm a teenager again. He said, I can drag on the cigarettes like I've never smoked before. And he said his lungs felt fresh and new.
Why would a doctor have a crisis of consciousness telling?
Because he didn't want to encourage him to keep smoking. And it is also it goes against everything he's ever taught. You can't smoke a pack a day for 30 years straight and have a totally clean lung scan.
Well, see, I've got my own theory on tobacco too. I mean, it's another natural plant. It's been used throughout history uh, by different tribes people and cultures. It's always been smoked. They didn't. It's never been cooked and eaten raw. It's always been smoked. Um, so Mother Nature doesn't make any mistakes. It's what we do to it in the process of growing and producing a commercial product
Hmm.
that would potentially have the dangerous effects. But that is extraordinary. That's
And
amazing.
that goes out to all smokers out there.
Unreal. So it took him. Well, he had the test at 12 months, but he reported to you a couple of months before that he was already feeling the benefits.
Yeah, and then he just recently, like, a couple weeks ago, he had this lung scan and called me and told me that conversation with the doctor.
So emphysema, potentially.
Yeah. The whole body will rebuild itself. It's just, like I said, there's only a certain toxic load that it can handle. And if you reverse that trend, it starts to rebuild the body. The first thing you do is start shoveling everything out while at the same time rebuilding.
I mean,
Um,
I can take myself as an example. I lost my grandfather to emphysema, my grandmother to cancer, my father to, well, it was a heart attack, but he had a damaged heart from as a child. That's just my immediate family. And my grandfather, who I lost to emphysema, his quality of life was absolutely crap for 25 years, the last 25 years. Um, so there's three people in my immediate family who potentially could have had an improved quality of life and perhaps a much longer life
yeah,
through this one piece of knowledge.
about cleaning the body. It's really all that we are talking about is cleaning the body. There's a good Dr. Alexis Carrel wrote a book called Man the Unknown, and he took a group of earthworms and fed them their regular diet, whatever they eat. Um, but every once in a while, he kept pulling out this one same earthworm from the pack, and he would fast it. I don't know, it was like for a week at a time or a couple of days. I don't know how long he could handle it, but he kept fasting it intermittently. That one earthworm outlived 19 generations of its peers. That would have been a 2,000-year-old man if you extrapolate. And this is really what we're talking about, as we've all suffered through this shithole called the 20th century and the 21st century. And I think we've all earned to actually experience the rest of our lives without fluoride and all this toxic, heinous garbage. And so I'd like to live a lot longer. And everybody takes the Bible as the word of God, but yet when it comes to Noah being 900 years old, and they just dismiss it and say, "Well, they kept track of time differently back then." No, those are real ages. 60 and 70 is a complete joke,
Mm.
and Western science admits it has no known reason for the body to die other than toxic overload. And
I
those
think I've
earthworms.
shared this story with you before.
Okay.
Um, January 1st, 2000 was the day that I started looking into aging because they had a photo, the front page of the paper had six people on it, or three people on it, six photographs of people who had lived through the entire century. And they had a photo of them at, in their late teens or early 20s, and then a current photo. And I just looked at this, and it hit me so hard that there was something very, very, very wrong with this picture. that this actually defied nature. It wasn't part of nature. That these bodies, in their current state, were in fact already decrepit and rotting while we were still occupying them. That doesn't sound natural to me. And that's I started looking into various things, and I came across urine therapy back then. And no, not going there. But in terms of longevity, and you come across the whole fountain of youth, philosopher's stone sort of information. But um, that to me is what it was. This wasn't aging. This was premature rotting, and it shouldn't happen while we are still inhabiting the body and still supposedly filling it with life force. That shouldn't happen to me. And that was the day that it hit me, and I knew it for me, yeah, it was a truth from that moment on, that this is just not the way it's supposed to be.
Yep. And I could do some more descriptive of all the different diseases. I want to make sure we mentioned diabetes, and I just want to show how all these different diseases are just junk in the system.
Hmm.
Um, on diabetes, and specifically, we have a woman that's doing a live, ongoing testimonial that can be seen as a public page on Facebook. It's called facebook.com/changing my DNA. And there's a woman named Anna Smith who has had type 1 childhood diabetes. She's in her early 50s. She's had it since she was 10. And she's now on roughly her 180th day. And she's been keeping a daily diary of her transition. The last time I talked to her, she was down to 1/3 of her original amount of insulin prior to 180 days. So she was at this much, and she's down to that much insulin per day. And she's been doing the distilled waters therapy. Diabetes is a joke. I mean, it's not a joke for the sufferers, but this whole, search for the cure. It's not the pancreas is not producing insulin. It's that the insulin ejector ports on the pancreas are clogged up with mineral deposits. It's just like a fuel injectors in a car.
Hmm.
They get clogged up and they start sputtering gasoline or clog up altogether, and that cylinder stops firing. And the solution is to run engine cleaner through it because it melts the deposit on the ejectors. This is the identical thing. You run this cleaner through the water-based body that your body is, and it will melt the deposits on the pancreas. And the pancreas it's not that it can't produce insulin, it's that it's clogged up. And you free it up from those clogs, and it starts producing insulin. And that's why she is reducing and slowly reducing it. She's absolutely on her way to curing diabetes. And there's plenty of testimonials about it. She's just one that we've all got as a real live person doing it publicly and sharing her experience. She's an excellent writer. Um, um,
She's also suffering from more than just diabetes, isn't she?
yeah, she's listing everything that has happened to a typical human in their early 50s. Like you said, her fingers are straightened out, the swelling's gone down, different pains move out of her. She just is. She's a wonderful writer, and I hope to have her at a Distilled Waters conference we're working on organizing. I'd like to have her speak. But just on the visualization aspect. So there we see that's just matter clogging up the pancreas. All heart disease, and they're operating on people, and they're they're using tunneling devices to go up through people's arteries. They're just doing barbaric surgery on people to mash down the symptoms of heart disease, to put stents in and inflate balloons rather than see, hey, how can we clean the plaque out of the arteries? They're shoving wire mesh screens up inside the arteries and an inflated balloon to compress the plaque against the sides of the walls, when they could just run some water through it and pull out all that inorganic matter. Arthritis, it's just junk clogged up between the bones and the tissues. Multiple sclerosis. Sclerosis means hardening of the tissues. So they have multiple hardenings of the tissues throughout the body and the brain. Well, what is hardening of the tissues is caused by the mineral deposits. Um, it just goes on and on like that. Just every disease it leads to garbage in the body.
So how about things like cancer and AIDS and, well, let's leave it with cancer and AIDS, or other viruses as well?
How? What about them?
How are they working with those?
It pulls them out too. It
So a
uh,
virus is also a positively charged.
Almost all pathogens have a positive charge. Pretty much, it's just everything that is you and supposed to be a living object for you has a negative charge, and everything that's not supposed to be anywhere near you or in you has a positive charge. And these are just the
So
these
when a
aren't.
cell, if when a cell becomes cancerous, does it become positively charged?
That's a good question. Um, I don't know.
Okay.
Uh, at least we could probably assume that it's dirty, and the influx of the brand new water allows the. So, like you said, the river. If you don't have the river wet enough and it runs dry, everything comes out of solution and becomes solid. And so, when you're dehydrated, your cells don't have fresh water to move the garbage out, and then become toxic and cancer. I guess we can kind of make it simple like that. They also say cancer is just purely a fungus, and you can also just go hog wild on garlic and vaporize cancer
And
because it's
in the same
antifungal,
way,
but
you're
distilled
right.
water is
Yeah.
antifungal.
In the same way that the medical profession have recommended daily doses for vitamins, which are, you know, in some cases 100 times less than what we should be getting. The daily recommended intake of water is like 8 glasses a day or something like that. It's a lot less um, than what you're suggesting.
Yeah, eight. They're usually saying 8 8-ounce glasses, so they're saying about half the volume. But even those people, when they do that, I mean, just the people that do the half gallon a day is a massive improvement over the typical, you know, pint to a quart a day or half a liter at most for a lot of people, right? And a lot of people don't even touch water. Their liquids are coffees and sodas.
That's what I was going to say. Um,
Right.
Signs, I mean, we don't recognize dehydration for what it is. Apparently, when your body is initially thirsty, it's a sensation in the gut that we interpret as hunger. So we'll eat instead of drink. By the time that you actually feel thirsty or your throat feels dry, you're already at a point of chronic dehydration. And so we've even lost touch with what our body's telling us and the signals that we're receiving from it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, what scientist loves to smear dirt, grease, and tar on his delicate instruments before he begins his experiments? And so, no wonder that you can have ADD. You can't think straight. You can't operate correctly if there's just residue and resins and tar and garbage all throughout the body. You know, we always talk about what an incredible machine we are, and we are, but no machine like works well at all with junk in it.
Yes, we all need to go in for our regular tune-ups.
You know,
Give ourselves as much maintenance as we do our cars. Thank you. I mean, I know we were going to finish this half an hour ago or more, but there's so much more to say even still.
I know I sit here and keep going, but I think we've covered the basic instructions. Pure water is the cleaner. The volume is the method. Um, and just keep at it day after day. And I've never seen it fail if people do the volume. And I kind of challenge somebody. I want somebody out there to prove to me that you can't make it work. And somebody evil, start pounding water. Tell us how you feel 90 days from now. And give it 90 days too. You'll know within 3 days you'll feel more energy. With a month, you'll know. But it tends to be 30 days out. If people have really kept up the volume all those 90 days consecutively, that's when they start to have the reports of, just can't believe that their skin has changed, that their fingers are straightening out, how much better they feel. And I'm not saying stop at 90 days, keep going.
Mm.
It's what you should do forever.
Yeah, it's a way of life, isn't it?
And I could keep talking.
So guys, but um,
So everybody get this out there. You know, you got anybody that's dying, you got anybody that's you're just so sad because you got somebody that's close to death. This is what you need to pull them back out of it if you can get them to do it. But it can be heartbreaking to have this knowledge because there's a lot of people that are so miseducated, you can't get them to not believe the doctors. And um, I mean, I knew somebody that was all clogged up and had terrible circulation in their legs, and I got them to start drinking urine, and they were doing about a half a cup a day. And he'd actually told me, he said, Andrew, I said, I'm starting to feel the circulation in my legs move better. And his father had terrible heart problems too. It had his legs amputated, first his left leg, and then his right ankle, and then up to the knee on the other one. You know, they just start getting chopped off. And he was doing good. And he went to his doctor and told him what he was doing. And the doctor said, no, 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 stop. You're going to ruin all the progress we've made.
what
And
progress?
so he
The
listened.
progress of chopping off bits, body parts. What
Yeah.
progress?
I mean, they hadn't chopped anything off him yet, but he was coming close to that point. And, you know, there were,
So
and
he
so
stopped.
he
Oh,
listened to his doctor. And 3 months ago, he had a massive heart attack.
did he survive it?
Oh, no, no, he dropped dead.
Oh no. Okay.
Just like his father. So there's an anti testimony. um, this is what we all need to change this whole planet. So I keep
Look, there's
saying
a
that.
reason. There's a reason this information is coming out now. You know,
Right,
it's
it's the
all
age.
part. Yes, it's the age of Aquarius.
That's why I call my website Aquarius the Water Bearer. And I find that really also telling and faithful that in this time when companies are going around buying up every possible website name they can think of so they can sell it for big money later on. 2 years ago, when I checked, it was just, I mean, it's the biggest metaphysical event to happen in the past 2,000 years is the dawning of the new age, and it's sitting there unowned. Well, that's great. That's a perfect place to put the water knowledge.
Well, it
So
was
that's what I'm
meant
trying
for
to do.
you.
That's what I'm trying to do with that site is just make it the place for all the collected water knowledge.
So again, it's aquariusthewaterbearer.com, and I highly recommend that everyone go there and look at all of the resources and the links, the books. There's so much information.
People can also search for my name, Andrew Norton Weber, on YouTube, and they can see a number of other done some talk with Santos Bonacci. I did a series with Lance White. I did a great series with Chrissy McMahon early on. And, that was a fantastic video called Co-Creating God with Unlimited Power. That's a nice title to search for. But that's a contact at andrewnortonweber.com and aquariusthewaterbearer.com. And I'll be speaking at the New World Fair July 21st in Queens, New York this summer. If anybody's not aware of that fair, it's unbelievable lineup of speakers. I'm incredibly honored to have been asked. Um, Deepak Chopra is going to be there. Nassim Harriman, Magenta Pixie is working on being there. They've invited her. Santos got invited, but he had to turn it down because he wants to work on his books. Amy Goodman, Alex Jones is going to be there. It's a pretty amazing lineup. Mike Adams, a health ranger.
Hmm.
But you can see the speakers list at thenewworldfair.com, I believe. But I also see that as a really positive sign to me. That is amazing that it really speaks to me that they are going to allow this knowledge at the World Fair. Um, to me, I'm finding this knowledge to be a real litmus test of who is interested in waking up the planet and who is interested in keeping the planet in darkness. And you acted the exact same way as Santos did. It immediately resonated with you, and you want to talk about it and you want to share it because it's who wouldn't want to know the original cleaning and maintenance instructions for the body, and that's all we're talking about. And so that to me is another sign to me that the 100th monkey has popped and we've reached a crescendo of consciousness because the acceptance of wanting to broadcast that knowledge to the world. And that's, I don't
Well,
want to do
the truth is simple. I mean, and this is simple.
exactly,
This is
exactly.
it's water.
Just like
Yeah.
alchemy is not some crazy complex super thing. It's about making the body shine. And that's why all the pictures of the saints have the golden glow. And when your pineal gland is calcified, people that can see auras, they say there's a gray dot right here. When you clean out, there's a golden glow, and that gray dot is the color of lead. This is all about the philosopher's stone. That is the crystal covered pine cone throne that is the seat for your soul, as Descartes said. And the philosopher's stone is that crystal pine cone right in the center of your head. And alchemy frees it up. And urine therapy is alchemy. Alchemy is urine therapy. But now that we know that it's the distilled water aspect, we have a little cheating side mechanism. We can access pure alchemy through distilled waters or fruit juice or even all the precipitation. So I'll try to
Thank you.
stop at that.
Thank you again. That's
You're a
yeah.
wonderful interviewer, and you asked many excellent. I appreciate you rolling with me and asking me nice questions. It was fun.
Oh, there's so much to know, and I'm sure we could do this again, and probably not cover the same thing twice. But I want to say to people again, if you do have a testimonial, or in 3 or 6 months' time, if you decide to go down this road and you have a testimonial, please get it to Andrew, um, because he's
I'm compiling, and I'm going to
compiling.
publish all, and it can be anonymous. You can put your name with it if you want, but we're going to have a testimonial on the website. I don't have a file there yet, but it'll be an alphabetical listing by disease of all the testimonies I've collected. And so you'll be able to look up whatever problem or issue you have alphabetically by disease, and you can start reading about what other people are saying that happens to them, and it'll gives you tremendous amount of confidence. And I want to again reiterate that everybody should read The Water of Life by John Armstrong, and there's a free PDF link to it at my site. It'll just teach you the potential power that you have to clean out your body.
So there were two questions that I can remember that I had that we didn't quite have an answer for, which was autism
Uh-huh.
and does cancer become a positively charged cell? So if anybody out there has the answer to either of those questions, please let Andrew or myself know. Um, let's do this again soon
Okay.
because I really think that you're going to have a lot of questions come from this, and we might be able to cover those off.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do a show of questions that'll help us know what we forgot to cover, and that'll be fantastic. And then you'll have more progress yourself.
Yeah, so hopefully I'll be at the 4 liters a day mark by then.
Okay, cool.
That's the goal. All right, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Lisa.